I think we will get started. So I will hand over to Jo.
Thank you, Lauren. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Just a quick technical note. I'm not sure if you guys can see the chat, which we can, the actual chat feature. So please use the Q&A if you want to say hello to everybody, and pop any questions there as well as we go through. So good morning, everyone. It's great to be joining to talk about our kind of 6 months of data from the beginning of this year. We've got just under 30 minutes. I'm going to go through the highlights that are covered in the new half-year review, which comes out, well, it's now live, 10 a.m. this morning, which covers projects from the 1st of January through to the 30th of June, so those that were completed during that time frame. We weren't going to do a half-year review, but we've been so kind of impressed with the take-up that we've had this year, sort of as an increase on last year, so we thought it'd be interesting to share where we're at so far. So here we are. So before we get started, I'd just love to say thanks to my team who've worked really hard to kind of analyse this data. We've all got pretty good with Excel pivot tables over the last 12 months now. And also to Get Set Higher, who are our industry partners. You can see their logo on the front there. They are supporting us to put on events like this. So it's brilliant to have them as a partner with us. We are, pretty excited to share this. There'll be some time for Q&A at the end. So, but if something occurs to you kind of during the session, then please do pop it in the Q&A part. And if we don't get to your question and it's not answered by the review, which we'll pop a link to at the end, please feel free to drop us a line on info@weareadgreen.org. So let's get started. Lauren, if you could, Lauren's driving my slides today. If you could pop on to the next one, that'd be great. So the 2022 full year review, which was published in March, was pretty kind of comprehensive. We covered a lot of wider information about the training, the carbon calculator, resources for production companies, agencies and brands. And for this kind of half-year mini review, which as I said covers January to June, we've just really honed in on the data. So if you do want that kind of wider piece, we also feature our super users. There's lots of quotes and sort of case studies. Please do download the big one, which just covers all of last year. We'll be doing another one of those, publishing that in early 2024. Get all my years right today. So this review, this mini one, is going to cover a snapshot of the data collected during the first half of this year. And during these 6 months, the advertising production community completed 446 motion and or stills projects, and that's compared to 515 across the whole of 2022. So quite a big jump. We already know obviously where we're at since June, and we're pretty much on course to double, if not better, than we did last year. So we're really pleased with the uptake and the sort of momentum that we've got from those who are using it regularly and sort of embedding it into their process. So the report doesn't compare the 6 months and the 12 months directly, but we're going to give you a sense of the shifts that we've seen so far, to give you some context when we talk about the data in a few minutes. And we really hope this snapshot gives you a kind of sense of how the industry baseline has shifted so far this year. But as I said, we're comparing 6 months to a year, so it's not a direct comparison, but it'll just give you a sense. And we'll also just remind you how you can download your own data as well to give you a sense of where you compare to where we're at. So next slide, please, Lauren. Thank you very much. So before we go into the details, we want to give you some context as to the scale of carbon for some everyday things. So I think for a lot of people, carbon is still quite an abstract sort of concept. For us, it's kind of day in, day out. We're thinking about it, we're talking about it, but that's not the case for everyone, of course. So this is from our favourite book, our team book, the book everyone gets when they join the team. It's How Bad Are Bananas? And this is just some general stats from the book, just to give you some context. So the one to really hold in your mind as you move through is the 13 tonnes, the one at the bottom right there. So 13 tonnes is the average amount of carbon expended or emitted by activities undertaken by an average UK citizen in a year. So how they might heat their home, how they travel around, the things they might buy, the food they eat, those sorts of things. The same things you can measure in the tool, essentially. Collectively expend on average 13 tonnes in a year. Now you might notice next to that on the left, there's a global average as well, which is 7 tonnes. So we're higher than the global average, not the biggest in terms of by country, but certainly higher than the average. So hold that 13 in your mind as we go through. So let's give you some facts from the data this year. So we've got 10 facts to give you, and then I can do a bit of comparison afterwards. So first up, 2,742 tonnes was emitted as a result of the 446 projects completed in the first half of this year. So if you compare that to kind of 13 tonnes for one person, that's obviously a lot, 2,742 tonnes. Next up, almost 60% of projects, so that's 258, were under 1 tonne and totaled 70 tonnes between them, just over 70 tonnes in total for those 58% of projects. On the kind of other end of the scale, the really large ones, so projects over 100 tonnes, so a project that's emitted 100 tonnes through either travel and transport, the spaces they used to create the piece in the first place, the materials they brought together, and the disposal of anything they had on the set. 100 tonnes were emitted across those activities. There were 5 of those, and in total, 711 tonnes. So that's 10 times the amount emitted by the 258 projects that were under a tonne. And we know that there are way more than 5 projects out there. When we look at these projects, these 5 projects over 100 tonnes, these are hero type content, pieces of content, with activities that don't seem out of the ordinary for those who sort of have a production background. I was a production manager, I'm looking at these from that point of view, and they don't look out of the ordinary. They're shoots that I worked on when I was a production manager, you know, those sorts of style shoots. And as I said, we know there's more than 5. So it's great that we had 4 in total last year. So it's great that we've got 5 already from the first half of this year, but we know there are loads more. And the more that we can get, the more balanced picture we get in terms of what the industry sort of, is looking like in terms of an average. Okay, moving on. So 84% in total were under 10 tonnes. So in some ways that's good, but we really want to get this balanced broad picture. So as I said, the more big ones that we can get helps us to kind of see what those big ones look like, where people are using that carbon, where they're expending it. In terms of an average, people always want to know kind of what's normal. Am I good or am I bad? Now, the average for this 6 months of data was 6.1 tonnes. That's not to say everything below that is good, everything above it is bad. It's just a touch point to kind of reference for your own data. But we had a massive range. So they went from 1.75 kilos, which would have been a very, very small shoot, maybe some renewable energy in there, probably somebody walking to set, maybe just 1 or 2 people having a meal, right up to 181 tonnes. So that was our largest project. So that 181 tonnes equates to 14 people's worth of carbon for a year in the UK. So everything people are doing, living their lives, 14 people, and we've had a project that equates that amount of carbon, 181 tonnes, to put together a piece of content. So quite interesting stats, and that's kind of massively up from last year. I think 129 was the biggest one we had last year, so it's gone up. Okay, on to the next few facts. So 75% of the total emissions that were recorded in the tool across the various activities were from travel and transport. So that's over 2,050 tonnes just from travel and transport. And the other areas that we talk about in the tool follow the same order as last time. So first up, travel and transport. Next is spaces. So that's kind of things like hotels, studios, locations powered by generators, for example, post-production studios. Those are all kind of grouped together under spaces, and those are next. Then you've got materials, so things like catering, timber, paint, plastics. And then finally, disposal, which makes up a very small amount, 0.32%. So for those who are sort of, our big messaging really is not to focus on the disposal as much as you might focus on travel and transport, because they have a much bigger impact. You're going to be able to really slash your carbon amount if you look at that travel and transport area first, and ideally, obviously, before your shoot, so you've got time to do something about it. Now, the percentage of travel and transport goes up as project size increases. So under 1 tonne projects, it makes up around 32%. But in those over 100 tonnes, it goes up to 85%. So you can see that kind of broadly speaking, the bigger your project, the more likely it is that a massive portion of it is going to be from travel and transport. And that's because it's just so comparatively larger and this, we're talking about air travel here, that of the travel and transport, air travel is the thing that is driving that up. So again, that's the thing to tackle first. And in terms of per shoot day, so sometimes we get people asking sort of what's the average per shoot day? I've got a 5-day shoot, what sort of amount am I looking at? This time around for the 6 months of data is 3.3 tons per shoot day. Gone up, I'll do some comparisons in a minute, but just to give you a sense of what's quote unquote normal, or certainly what's average across our data. Okay, a couple of last facts about engagement. So 65% of projects both originated in the UK and had budgets in GBP, and there are a few other UK projects that were done in other currencies, but the majority were GBP. So we've seen quite a big an international set of completed projects as well, which is brilliant. And lastly, 88 companies created these 446 projects. So you can see many companies will have created obviously more than one, but there were a number of companies who completed just one during that 6-month period. Now, for some companies that might be completely normal, but for others, we know they're working on more than one project. So as ever, we'd love to see more, because it just means we can give a more balanced picture about the data across the industry. So let's give you some context next. So it's only 6 months of data, as you said, so we can't do sort of direct comparisons, but what we can look at is whether the averages have gone up, for example. So overall, obviously we had 2.7 thousand tons, so 2,700 odd tons in 6 months, sort of via the activities that have been recorded in the tool, compared to 2,400 odd in the 12 months. So less projects have generated more emissions, which is not necessarily bad. In a sense, we want people to not feel bad about recording these projects. We want to know about them. So, you know, we're still in a phase where we're thinking about progress over perfection. We want to know what these projects look like, how you're doing, how many of them are happening. So the more projects we can get recorded, the better insights we can give you back. But just to kind of say and note at this point that obviously those 6 months have generated more than the 12 months already. The mean average project size has gone up. So last year it was 4.7 tons, this year it's 6.1. Now, we know that we've had a much larger project as the largest this year, which obviously will push that average up. So the more we can get in, the more balanced that picture will be, and the more the median impact will kind of come into play as well. The percentage of projects under a ton has gone up slightly. It was 56, is now 58. We've got a few more of those comparatively, obviously not in real terms because it's only 6 months, but a bigger percentage of projects that are under 1 ton. The mean impact per shoot day has gone up 2.2 to 3.3, but again, that could be because of that very large project that is the largest one. Companies completing projects, this is slightly cheeky of me because it's gone up from 87 to 88, but this is only a 6 months worth of data. So we're really hoping, and actually we've already seen, that there are more companies getting involved and getting started with measurement in the sort of intervening time from the end of June to now. So we really hope that will go up by quite a few by the end of this year. In terms of international projects, the UK projects have gone down from 74 to 65%. So therefore we're seeing more international engagement, which is brilliant as well. We've got a great engagement in the UK, but to see other companies, other countries, sorry, sort of joining in is really great from our point of view, because it just, again, gives us a more overall picture. Percentage from travel and transport overall. Now, this is the big one. I've already kind of talked about this, but the overall emissions that were attributed to travel and transport have gone up from 62% across all projects last year to 75% this year. Again, could be because of that large project, but that's a massive jump. We're now 3/4 travel and transport in terms of the emissions recorded for the first 6 months this year. And that obviously goes up when you talk about the larger projects, as we already mentioned, and it does indeed. So it went from 74% in the 4 projects that were over 100 tons last year to 85% for the projects this year. And again, probably due to that very large project that we've got, the 181 ton project. But it does really highlight just how much travel and transport will impact your footprint. You might be doing everything you can on the ground, but when it comes to adding flights to your project, it will go up in a big way. So that's really the first thing to tackle if you are a company that works on those sorts of international shoots. where you're sending different crew members or agency teams or brand teams, to different places to shoot, we're thinking about what you could do instead. Whether that's local crews or shooting closer to home, for example. So even though we're only looking at the first 6 months, what we predicted in our 22 annual review for the whole year was that the average footprint size would rise, and that's what we've seen. Obviously, we know there are a few reasons for that, because we've got some larger projects in there. We don't have quite as many as last year, but it's only 6 months, 5 versus 4, but we already know we've got more since June, so that will be a larger pool of projects to pull data from when we do that full year review. As I said, we know there's lots more pieces of hero content being made, and we're pleased to see there's some increased engagement from existing organisations who are working on large projects and new users as well, because that moves us closer to giving a more accurate picture of the whole sort of production landscape. And of course, we'll never know what the entire landscape looks like and how much of it we've got recorded. We've done some different sort of thinking about how we could look at that and how we could measure that. And we're not also talking about 12 months of data from last year, those first 6 months being replicated this year, but it's not the same projects that are being recorded, obviously, so it's not a direct comparison either. But I think the more information we have, the better insights we can give. We've also seen in the last 6 months, or during the 6 months of this data, that users are becoming more adept at gathering information from their suppliers and their production partners, the production companies of their own agency. And this often or can result in an increased number of activities that are being logged because people have more information, more they want to share, and they want to get a kind of more detailed picture as well. So sometimes that means larger footprints overall because more activities have been input into a project, which could also be impacting on our average footprint size as well. We did put out a video about quick data gathering. So we're going to post a link probably in the Q&A, because I think you guys can see it there. And that is how to use your budget as a guide. So I think that's also been helping people as well. And as we kind of look forward to next year, when we're going to release the data on completed projects across the whole of this year, not just the first half, we're anticipating that some calculator updates we released in August, as well as changes to our reviewing policy that we made in October, will contribute to a further increase in completed projects. So the updates we did in the tool include prompts which appear at different stages of the process when you're using the tool, and they're designed to help users complete projects quickly before freelance teams move on to new productions and to do so more accurately. So as an example, users are now asked if airport travel, transfers and hotels were included in the budget if they enter flights. So it kind of gives them a prompt and make sure the items aren't overlooked. And in addition, as I said, we're able to update our reviewing policy due to the insights that we've gained from the past 2 years. So the tool's been live since September 2021. So as of the 9th of October, only projects which meet a certain criteria need to be reviewed by us. And we keep an eye on kind of common inaccuracies, and some of those are the ones that we've kind of addressed with the prompts as well. And it allows us to immediately complete projects sort of safe in the knowledge that even unreviewed ones will give users the information they need to make reductions and form policies. So we knew that from the fact that we've got a lot of very small projects, if we sent those back for review, sort of amendments perhaps by the team that had created them, the changes they then made a very, very small material difference. So we were confident that we could complete those projects without needing to go back and ask for additional things. We are doing sense checks on every 20th project that doesn't meet the criteria, so we're still checking that holds true. But it means that you can complete your projects a lot more quickly, and that should also help us to grow the data set a bit faster as well. So we I'll kind of wish, I guess, for next year and the rest of this year to be able to share the information next year is that everyone continues to sort of embed the process into their production process. We know this is extra. We want people to complete projects and sort of see them through to that end point so that we can have that information and help you to understand how to use it to kind of do what's next, do the reduction part. We know that this will take time to kind of embed into your process, and we know that we need to also make some refinements to the tool to make it easier and quicker. But we really hope that what we've kind of done so far demonstrates our commitment to kind of support you in doing this as easily as possible. We know there's a kind of continued balance between making it easy for you guys and making it robust in terms of data if it's going to be used for reporting, for example. And also we know there's kind of an ongoing education piece that everyone needs to kind of understand what to do with this data and how to use it to actually reduce, because measurement is obviously just the first part, but it gives you that kind of knowledge, that power to do something about it. So I guess at this juncture, I just want to say thanks to everyone who's completed a project, because you are really helping us to obviously give this data back, and also everyone who's helped us by giving us feedback as well, because it's really, really important that we know where best to kind of focus our energy, our attention, our budget as well. Because, you know, we're a small organisation, we can't do everything, but we really want to try and do as much as we can to support you. And those insights are really, really valuable. So moving on to the next slide, in terms of what you guys can do. So the first thing that would be great is if you click on the little export to CSV button. Lauren, I put in a little animation here, thank you very much. So that button is just there. If you go to your projects, you'll be able to see the export to CSV button. There is a detailed version and a basic version. So that will give you a CSV or an Excel file where you'll have a list of your projects. And if you pick the detailed version, a list of your activities, so that you can do some deeper analysis. And one thing we're excited to kind of do in our review next year is some deeper work on where the emissions are coming from within those areas. So not just saying travel and transport is 75%, but saying within travel and transport, let's say 70%, we don't know this yet, is air travel, and of that, X% is business. So we can drill down much further, and so can you. So if you log in, go to your projects, you'll be able to export as many or as little as you like. You can use the filters to filter out anything you don't want to download. You can download everything and filter it then, whatever works for you. So please do that. That will also give you a sense of where you're at in terms of that industry average as well. You can do some very easy formulas to find out your averages and medians, all the rest of it. We did all those calculations ourselves with our data that we downloaded. So just the same as you guys could do as well. So to kind of wrap up, and I haven't been looking at the Q&A, so I'll have a quick scout through that in a second. Here are 5 things to do next. So first of all, the report, obviously, as I said, is live now. We'll post a link in a moment. Share the report with your team and your production partners. Help them to understand the data that we're kind of looking at and what that means for them. You can book a free sustainable production training session if you're kind of yet to get started and aren't sure kind of how to get going. Register for a carbon calculator account if you haven't already, or if you have, complete any outstanding projects which are ready to submit and get them over to us. 4, download your data. So as I said, use that button, that export to CSV button, and get your data and start having a look at where you sit. And read the resources guide best suited to your company and role. So if you go to the website, you can download those resources guides, and you can follow a step-by-step guide which takes you through the different things that are worth doing to kind of get up to speed and get on the journey. And I think to sort of close the what to do next, you know, we're coming up to the end of the year rapidly. And I think this is a great time to think about the policies you might put in place for next year. If you are in a position to download your data, you can do a bit of analysis. You can understand that, you know, the biggest thing is X, Y, or Z. How could a policy across your business help you make a reduction in that area? You know, we're all trying to get to net zero. There needs to be some milestones along the way. We need to maybe halve by X point, you know, halve again by X point to get us to that zero path. So think about the things that will have the biggest impact. And obviously, the more you measure, the more information you have to then be able to make some decisions. So it's data-led decisions. So I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to have a quick scout of the Q&A. I don't know if anyone's been answering as I've gone through. Oh, thanks, Lauren. I couldn't see everything at once.
Yeah, we'll do a couple here. So we've got one which is, are there any plans in the future to develop an app as it'd be useful during shoot days, etc.?
So it's something we've discussed. I think the thing that we sort of advocate for is obviously completing or doing a draft footprint before the shoot, so you're not sort of trying to rush around on the shoot day, and also so that you kind of have the information to hand before, so that you know what you can do about it. But I totally get that it's a very, would be a very handy thing. So it's definitely on the sort of wish list of things we're thinking about. We just have to kind of weigh it up based on the sort of other features we might want to add and the budget we have available. But yeah, it's definitely kind of something that's been brought up before, and something that's kind of we're thinking about. So thanks for that.
And in a similar vein, we've got, are you developing an API to link data into client systems?
Another one we've always had on the list, and yes, is again balancing what we can afford to do and what's sort of useful for the most people. But yes, that one's a little higher up on the list, actually, I would say. So yeah, watch this space.
And then there's one here, I'll just make sure I get this right. So looking to capture projects with an impact over 10 tonnes. So in the 2020 review, this roughly related to 3+ shoot days or £250,000 and over. How has this threshold changed in the 2023 H1 data?
So I'm going to pull the politician response here because I don't have that info to hand. So what I'm going to say to you, Dan, is if you download the mini review, if you have a look, if you have any questions, do drop us a line and we can answer them there, because it's probably easier for us to do that than to try and answer that one on the hoof.
I think that's it. If there's any other questions, pop them in now. Otherwise, we will wrap up.
Thanks, everyone. It's been so great to be able to share this with you, and we're excited for you to download the guide, or the review. All right. Thank you, Lauren. Thanks, everyone, for joining.